Okay, thank you, Hindun. Welcome, Dr. Aparna Sridhar from UCLE. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And yes, we are in virtual meeting, but actually, I want to know further about you and UCLE, not by virtual meeting. But now the opportunity only virtual meeting. Maybe in the future, we can see each other. Maybe in UCLA or maybe in Gajah Mada University. Okay, the purpose of this lecture is to broaden the knowledge of our students, especially for our resident here, and also for trainee, and how to write a good scientific writing in obstetric and gynecology. And we know that there are many challenges to write scientific writing here, because not only about language, English, but also how to develop the idea. And we hope it can enhance the collaboration between UCLA and also OBGYN department from here, Universitas Gajah Mada. Therefore, to increase the collaboration in research and also publication, also we can collaborate the future, the next opportunity in visiting professor maybe, and also clinical attachment. Thank you very much for your coming here and your lecture. Thank you. We can continue the lecture. Thank you, Hindun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Agung, for that warm welcome. Next, we will begin the presentation, and I will pass on the mic to the moderator for today, which is Dr. Adi. Dr. Adi, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hindun, for the kind introduction. Good morning, professors, doctors, and colleagues. Welcome to today's lecture on scientific writing. My name is Adi Arifianto, and I will be your moderator for this session. We are here today to learn how to write a good scientific writing in the obstetric and gynecology field. Our esteemed speaker today is Dr. Aparna Sridhar, MD, MPH, FA, COG, an associate clinical professor of obstetric and gynecology at the David Griffin School of Medicine at University of California, Los Angeles. We can see here her excellent publications. Dr. Aparna has extensive experience in scientific research and publication and has authored numerous papers in prestigious journals. Dr. Aparna has received the Martin Peterson Scholars Award from the American College of Obstetric and Gynecologists. The award was given in the recognition of her achievement in global women's health. We are fortunate to have her share her insight and expertise with us today. Good evening, Dr. Aparna. How are you, doctor?
I'm great, Dr. Adi. How are you? It's good to see you.
I'm also great, doctor. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, doctor. So I heard you just traveled from India to Los Angeles yesterday, doctor. It must be very tiring, doctor.
No problem. I just landed 2 hours ago.
Thank you very much for giving your time to give lectures today.
My pleasure, actually.
Okay. Without further ado, let's start it for the lecture. Dr. Aparna, the time is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, I really want to thank everyone in the university, the leadership, the faculty, and the trainees. I'm really thrilled to be a part of this virtual lecture. And I'll try my best in the next 40 minutes or so to give you a comprehensive information about effective scientific writing. Whether it's obstetrics and gynecology or any other field, I do think the concepts are pretty similar. I do have some slides in the end just to talk about what's special in OBGYN per se, but I think my talk is mainly geared towards how to write effectively to journals and papers and and practically kind of ace it. I have some audience interaction components because as someone who's been on the other side and have listened to lectures, sometimes I feel like if there is no participation from the audience, it feels incomplete, especially in the virtual platform where I'm sitting thousands of miles away from you all. I want to make sure that what I'm telling you guys is actually useful. So maybe I'll pause in between and put an audience question in there so you guys can interact with me. If there is a question, maybe write it down. So at the end, when Dr. Adi actually does the discussion, we can definitely have time for that as well. But I don't want anyone to feel scared or not, just ask any questions if you have. And if I don't have the answer, I'll get back to you. I also think this is a great opportunity to know you all because I do think there might be future opportunities for collaboration, whether it's in terms of smaller projects or, papers or, getting to teach you all more. I belong to 2 different countries now, so I feel like the global health and educating bigger portion of the audience is kind of, the global audience is what I really am passionate about. So I really wanted to thank, again, everyone for this opportunity. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Also, am I speaking too fast or is this pace okay? Everybody can easily understand me?
Yes, doctor. We can
Okay,
understand. Thank you.
great. Because I think sometimes being in the United States, we tend to speak a lot faster. So if there is any trouble hearing me or understanding me, please do let me know. While I pause here, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can clearly see your screen, doctor.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. So let's start with, I don't have any disclosures, meaning this talk is purely academic in interest. I don't have any commercial or otherwise obligations to this talk. At the end of this talk, I think all of you who are listening to the talk should be able to understand scientific writing in obstetrics and gynecology. And also, I want to give you a flavor of the standardized reporting protocols in research, whether it is an observational research or an experimental research, like how to kind of use standardized terminology. That will be another one. So simple objectives, I don't want to complicate things. And I'll try to concisely do this in the next 30 to 40 minutes. So before I begin, I want to hear from you if you have written a scientific paper, even if you haven't or you've tried it, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you have faced while you start or when you kind of write a research proposal? Maybe even one or two from the audience can share it with me. I would love to hear your voice and also hear something from you before I begin. Anyone?
Anyone want to share the idea or the opinions? Maybe? Yeah?
Please don't be scared. There's nothing right or wrong here. I just want to hear from you.
Good morning, Doctor. Maybe one of the hurdles that I faced was paraphrasing from what I read. They tend to copy and paste what I've read into what I will write into. So a big hurdle for me is paraphrasing all the materials that I've read.
Got it. Okay. Anybody else?
Anybody else? Anyone?
Okay.
Cookie.
Oh, Dr. Cookie. Okay. Let's see.
Thank you, Doctor. Maybe for me, my difficult that I found in the scientific writing is about what the topics should be pointed in my paper, maybe, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Okay. All valid points. When I started research and kind of writing papers, to me, the biggest challenge was like how to get started. Like, where do we even start this whole process? There's so much to write, there is so much going on. So I think, to find time to write was actually the biggest challenge. And that is one of the challenges for many people. Now, you could be writing the research paper from one of your proposals, or you could be writing a proposal itself. I think setting aside like a time for writing and also choosing like an optimal environment wherein you can kind of sit down and kind of split the thinking from writing and see what you need to do is really important. I think one of the things I would tell you all is to think of it like a story, like your research, which is going to be published, should be like a complete story. And you have to structure like a storyline and create like tables, figures, and everything before you actually write the full sentences and paragraphs so that you have a skeleton first, and then you kind of go through the writing part. It's also interesting that we should think about like the journal. So I think as trainees in obstetrics and gynecology, one of the things that I would recommend for all of you is to know what are your most popular local journals, what are some of the most popular international journals in obstetrics and gynecology, and then choose a potential journal very early. Have a journal in mind. Then every paper should be kind of like divided into smaller chunks so that you can actually find it like you're easier to write smaller chunks at a time rather than kind of thinking it as a big project at once. And then take some breaks, like, write for some time, take a break, and then there could be shorter breaks, there could be longer breaks. So, like, keep enough time to write any paper or proposal. And then if you do write and then you finish it, then reward yourself. Like you say that if I finish this, I'm going to reward myself with this. And I think rewarding yourself intermittently is really important. Also, I think every writer experiences good and bad days. I have had days where I write something and I don't like it at all. And I have had days where I write something and I'm like, oh, that came out good. So I think, it's the responsibility of the primary or the first author to kind of like make sure that they have all these skeleton and everything. And also to kind of divide the responsibility with the other authors. Remember, the papers are written by different, like a collection of authors. Also, all the authors should have shared the understanding of the primary objective of the paper, so everybody is on the same page. And if you have a big project, like say, for example, this is coming from a huge project that you're writing papers from, think about, are you going to write like one paper or are you going to divide it and write multiple papers? And again, we're going to go through this in detail, but understand like what are the word limits, what is the format of the each journal, and then understand those things early so you can see how things needs to be done. So now we're going to dive into the main writing. And the first thing any writing will have is actually your title, and then there comes an abstract of your scientific paper. I think title is the most important part of the paper. Because let's say you are the reader, you're only going to read a paper if you look at the title and you think, oh, this is actually useful for me. If I'm kind of putting the cap of an editor of a journal, I also think the title will decide if I want to continue reviewing this paper. Because if the title itself doesn't sound comprehensive or it doesn't give me the flavor, then why would I even kind of go through this, right? So if you have linked to electronic databases, and these titles are actually what is used to display results. So if you are writing about postpartum hemorrhage and postpartum hemorrhage is not in your title, those people who are looking into postpartum hemorrhage literature will not be able to kind of find your paper easily when they look it up on PubMed or Google Scholar or anything. So that's really important, but each title can only be of certain words or character count. So you have to review each author instructions from a journal to see how exactly have they recommended. Is there a specific word count? Is there a specific character count? These are some of the things that we do need to keep in mind while we write the title. So again, some journals allow single titles, some journals will allow subtitles, and then informative titles will actually also try to present some of the outcomes of the study. Some journals prefer to have study design in the title. For example, if it is a randomized controlled trial, it would be beneficial to kind of have, okay, this is an RCT, a randomized controlled trial in the title. But if the title word limit is really small, then you may be, you may not be able to kind of put those things in there. And then some journals also require like a short running title and an actual title, so you may have to do extra ones. So I want to bring it again to the audience. So we did a study that identifies the prevalence of traditional and technology-based reminder usage among oral contraceptive pill users and compare the total number of missed pills, whether it's like more than 2 active pills or not between them. So just so you know, this paper was like, we wanted to identify like, is it just remembering to take a pill versus keeping an alarm to take a pill? That's the traditional versus technological, which is better. So if you were in the audience and you are doing this study, can you suggest a title for this one? Anyone? Again, there's nothing right or wrong. I just want you to interact with me.
Does anyone want to share your ideas, maybe? What is the title for this
So,
exercise from Dr.
yeah.
Aparna? Sorry, doctor, can you share your PPT?
You want me to share the slide again? Okay, let me share the screen again. Hold on. Okay, there you go. So this study identifies the prevalence of traditional and technological reminder usage for oral contraceptive users. Is anybody interested to take a stab at it?
Maybe the title would be Comparison of Traditional and Technology-Based Reminder of Oral Contraceptives.
Very nice. That's perfect. I think that's great. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when you said the title, I understood that that's what is going to be done in the study. We created a little bit of a, different title. We said traditional or technological question mark, followed by a cross-sectional survey of oral contraceptive reminders in young adults. Again, I did not give you all like the full information about the design of the study. I didn't give you information about who were our, participants in the study. But as you can see in this title, we have incorporated the design of the study. It's a cross-sectional survey. We know like the target audience that it was done in young adults, and then traditional or technological, and the oral contraceptive reminders is there. So I just wanted to give you an example of how to kind of pick a title and what are, whoever who set the title, that's also totally fine. You could totally say comparison of the oral contraceptive reminder. So those, that's how you put the title. Okay, then let's go to the abstract. There can be, most of the journals actually ask for structured abstract. If it is a structured abstract, there is like background, methods, results, and discussion, typically about 200 to 300 words. It should address the key findings. And when you look at the abstracts, you should be able to understand the full study. Like you should be able to, know what has been done in the study. You don't need any reference for the abstracts. It's just a quick, 200 to 300 words title. And again, you don't need to read the whole things, but this is the abstract for the title that we actually just reviewed. And this is actually, you see objectives, methods, there is like conclusion as well as the results. So all the four, it's a structured abstract. If you see this, we have used like very less of the word count for objectives. Majority of the word count is actually in the methods section and the results section. And then the conclusion is also smaller. So when you write an abstract, I think your main meat should be within the methods and results. And then objectives and conclusion can be a little bit on the smaller side. Again, when you develop an abstract, use the journal format instructions strictly, but use it creatively because you only have smaller number of words. You don't have the ability to write everything in the abstract. Describe the most important concepts and clearly state like the research question, primary outcome, and then critically revise the abstract every time you make a revision to your main paper. Let's say the main paper got some reviews and you made a revision, you do have to revise your abstracts every single time. So that was title and abstracts. If I were to put a checklist for that, so construct title and abstract from keywords from all sections of the main text. Use important keywords at the beginning of the title so that it catches the attention of the reader and the reviewer. Avoid any abbreviations and passive voice in both title and abstract. Always state the objective and start the results section with answers to your research question. And then present effect sizes with confidence interval in your abstract so that people who are looking at it will understand what's going on. Check the abstracts and make sure that it can read independently from the main text and also revise every time the main text is revised. And always like the 4 W's of the abstract is what's known, why is the study needed, what did you do, what did you find, and what does this mean? Those are the 4 W's that you have to cover in the abstract. All right, next once the title and abstract is done, the next part of the paper is usually the introduction. And again, this is, you can have a short or a long introduction, but most journals actually prefer short and focused introductions. You don't need to write too much about the introduction because it must allow the readers to understand the biological, clinical, or methodological rationale, like why are you doing the study? What's the rationale behind it? And what are you going to do with it? Usually, while you read the introduction, it should sell the study to the editors, it should sell the study to the reviewers, and also to the media sometimes. Allow readers to understand why you wanted to perform this study and why the specific aims are why they are. This is usually the problem statement in the paper, right? So the final paragraph of introduction should have like a hypothesis of your study and also the research question. I want to encourage you all to try to combine this with what was done to answer the question and preferably kind of slightly indicate the study design, although because the method section is going to dive deep into the study design. Clear and clean, unemotional language, like you don't have to put your emotions into the introduction, but just provide the states, like the facts and everything. Also, if we were to again like summarize the introduction part, like the main thing is it's like a funnel shape with clear sections. You start broad and then you kind of bring it down narrow, right? So general background, which is broader, what's this all about? What is known and what is unknown about this specific subject. Then you kind of narrow it down a little bit more and to say, okay, what is our primary research question? What did we want to know? And then one more thing, even more focused, is study design and aim. And like, what did we do to answer this research question? That's kind of what you need to put in the introduction. Always look at the length of the introduction. I would say about 10 to 15% of the total word count should be that of the intro. And then again, it's more of like you can kind of make an outline, and this is like the start of the outline. And then will this introduction sell my paper to the editors, reviewers, readers, or the media? That's the biggest question you need to ask. And maybe have someone else read it and make sure this is kind of going there. So now we're going to dive into the methods section. I think if in a paper, if there are two main things, one is methods and the other one is results. Because even though results are more important, if the method is not written properly, there is a high chance that your paper will be rejected. So you have to really keep in mind and then use the appropriate terminologies to write a method section. So how to write a method section? You have to start developing a skeleton. You have to include all the information that the reader needs to understand how to present the key findings of the paper. What did we do? So the first and foremost thing, where was this study performed? It's important because I think that makes a huge difference in terms of what the audience were. How did you end up with the total number, the sample size calculation? Again, this is a whole different talk altogether, how to calculate sample size and what to do. And it's very important that you mention the inclusion criteria, who are included in the study, exclusion criteria, who were excluded in the study, what is a exposure, what is it that you studied, and what are the outcomes. So reporting specific study designs, I think there is like specific method reporting technology that you have to use depending on the different types of the study design that you have. So if you go to this website, I'm going to put this website in the chat so everybody can actually do it, or I'll actually email it to Dr. Adi so he can forward it to you all. They actually have reporting guidelines for different types of the study. For example, a randomized control trial is called consort guidelines. For observational studies, it's strobe. For systematic reviews, it's prisma, so on and so forth. So there is different study protocols that you need to adhere to the guidelines when you report a specific study design. Let me show you an example. This is for randomized control trial. It's called a consort guideline system. So in the methods section, you can actually see. So you have to include a trial design, which is description of the trial design, important changes to the methods after the trial, participants, eligibility, and the setting and locations, as I said. Intervention, what are the interventions for each group, for experimental group and also for the non-experimental group. Outlines, completely defined, pre-specified primary and secondary outcome measures. Sample size, how it was calculated, when applicable, explanation of it. And then you can see if you did perform randomization, there is a whole bunch of things that you do need to include in the writing. And then blinding, was it blinded? If blinded, how did the blinding assignments kind of done? And things like that. So there are specific reporting guidelines that these consort guidelines will give you for RCT. I'm going to pause here for a second. If you guys can all scan this QR code, what I did is that I put some of the main reporting guidelines into like a Google Drive in case if someone has difficulty accessing the other website. So you have the RCT case report, observational study, qualitative study, and then quality improvement research stuff. So I put all those things into this QR code. Can someone scan this QR code and tell me whether they do see all the documents in a Google Drive?
Yes, we see it. We
Okay.
can see it,
Okay,
Doctor.
great. I hope this is useful because it's really important to kind of know this because depending on the type of the study that you're doing, you need to use the different reporting guidelines. Again, Prisma, this is for systematic review studies. So look at the methods. There is like a whole list of things that you do need to put. And then this is for observational study, whether it's a cohort study or a case control study, you have to do this differently. This is for strobe. So you can actually take a look at this. So all the main documents are in that QR code. I'm happy to kind of send the documents on an email too. But that's how you kind of form a skeleton and then you put all the information in there. And then we have to match the data analysis with the research questions. So whatever the research question we had, each of those data analysis should be in the methods section. You can also demonstrate the credibility of your methods by citing some previous research, like why did we use this method? Because someone else in this paper used a similar method, and then you cite them. And then remove any redundant information and only describe methods that actually resulted in like whatever you're going to put in the results section, the methods section should actually be appropriate to that. So now you know how to report like the guidelines based on the different types of the studies that you do. And then the main checklist is include the basic information on the study design, settings, subject, data collection, data analysis. Also, some will require you to explicitly talk about the institutional review board or the ethics board approval. So you'll have to do that. And then refer to previous publications from the same large research projects if it's applicable. And then detailed information on the methods, as well as like if you have supplemental materials, you should be able to put that. And then again, if you were to read the methods section, ask yourself, would a researcher be able to reproduce the study with the information provided in this paper? That's going to be your biggest key. All right, so moving on to the other main part of the paper, which is our results section. So this results section of an article should provide clear, concise, and effective description of the findings from any study that you're actually writing up. Usually the result is written in the past tense, and because you've kind of concluded it, and that's why it's always written in the past tense. As we mentioned in the methods section, for every method described, you're going to describe the results. So, for example, let's say in our study of comparing like the traditional versus technological reminder system, if our objective was to get this cross-sectional survey in, I think you're going to kind of put the results in terms of all the questions that you got in, and you're going to summarize that into the results section. You have to start the results section with the description of the recruitment and response of the participants. Let's say if it is a cross-sectional survey, you say we sent the survey to X number of participants, X number reported. This is the proportion of the participants who actually responded to the system. If it's a randomized control trial, you say how the sample size was calculated, how did you kind of like get to the point, and what is the difference between each of them, and then the p-value and things like that. So always use guidelines from the reporting system that I gave you. And it's always, always important to use tables and figures to support your main text. And we will have a separate information about the different tables and figures and how to put them. So I'll go over that as a separate thing from this one. Again, always use the same order, usually experimental group first and the standard, or like, throughout the paper, don't keep changing because that makes it very confusing for the reader. So the common order of elements like recruitment or the response rate if it is a survey. What's the characteristics of the sample, like the demographic characteristics, like age and marital status and other things that you would have collected. Findings from the primary analysis, like what was the primary outcome? What did you analyze? What did you get out of it? Then what were the secondary outcomes that you were trying to go through? What is the secondary analysis that you did? And then any additional or unexpected findings that you got. So that's kind of how the results section should be divided into. I was gonna ask someone to look up the reporting instruction for the results section for a systematic review. Does anybody want to do that, or should we keep going?
Anyone? Keep going? Okay.
Keep going?
Dr.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
So I do have a checklist. So this is the one. You see how in the results section of the systematic review, this is from the Prisma, you have to include the study selection, study characteristics, risk of bias, risk of individual, results from the individual studies, and results of the synthesis for the, systematic review, reporting biases, and certainly how certain were the evidence. So there is like specific things that you have to include when you're scientifically writing a systematic review. So these are the things. So similarly, there'll be other things for like randomized control trial, a case list, and other things. So you do have to really depend it on like what type of article you're kind of publishing. So if we were to again summarize the results part, so again, write the results section in the past tense. That's really important. Structured reporting of the research, and that's kind of what the results should be. Present findings without interpretation. Don't kind of make conclusions of what you're doing because that's again a separate portion. But then make sure you highlight the findings from the tables and figures in the text. And then present estimates with a 95% confidence interval and consider providing additional results in the tables and figures as as web supplementation materials. If there's too much to present in the thing and you don't have enough word count, you can always use the supplementary material to follow up. All right, one more important thing that we're going to talk about is the discussion part, right? So the discussion is the summary of the research findings. So this is another main part. So I think you're going to put what you have done in terms of research into context by comparing your previous work. So that's what is going to happen in the discussion. So concise presentation of the results. Don't kind of make big statements. Don't cover up like something that's not good. You be very honest about what you found out in research and what you're presenting. And if there was an unexpected finding, let's say you went to look for, a randomized control trial to understand like treatment for hypertension, and then you all of a sudden figured out that the person also had some additional side effects or additional benefits, then you mention the unexpected findings, like don't cover it up. And the other big part of the discussion is to discuss the strengths of the study and weakness of the study. And the authors do appreciate, I mean, the reviewers do appreciate when authors actually talk about all the strengths and all the limitations. Like you don't want to omit things because then the reviewer will be, oh, you didn't mention this, you didn't mention that. So make sure you discuss what all you think as strengths and limitations. And when you kind of talk about the strengths of the study, always think about what you can put a word saying, we think this is strong because this is the implication to the practical or clinical word. Same with like weakness. If you actually kind of have a weakness, try to counterbalance a limitation with a specific strength. Like say, this is our weakness, but we have this strength of the study so that, that actually makes your paper stronger. And then if there were previous studies that actually were looking into the same research question, then discuss in the research paper what was the difference between the last research and this research? Why is your research a little bit different compared to the other one? Also anticipate reader questions, like think about if someone is reading your research, what they may ask, and then try to answer that or explain that if possible. And formulate implications to clinical practice always, because why do we care? Like what does it make a difference for us in the clinical practice? And always end the discussion with conclusion, so that you can say, okay, this is what we think, and don't kind of do overarching conclusions. Again, I'm not going to ask you, but this is like the strobe. This was for observational studies, right? So you can see the results, what are the things. So they do talk about limitation, interpretation, generalizability, and then you also have to include some other funding and other information into your writing. So if we were to do a checklist for discussion, again, summary of the what did we find, what is known, what is new, are these findings true, are the findings important, and what can we do with them? That's kind of, again, the inverted funnel shape, because you kind of start small and then you kind of like take it bigger. That's the opposite of the introduction, is your discussion. Answer the research question in the first paragraph when you start the discussion, and then check if this is in line with the research question. Check to see if the discussion section doesn't present any new results, and be frank about acknowledging the limitations. Don't be shy, and ensure that this offers like a clear ending to the story of the paper. Because remember, we talked about this being like a big story and how we need to kind of fill this together, and formulate like a clear, concise one-liner at the bottom line of the paper, because if someone is reading it, this last line is what they're going to remember. When we talked about the results, we talked about the tables and figures. So we're going to go over some of the information of how to write an effective table, or like how to present an effective figure. And, remember, one picture or one table is worth so many words. It must be self-explanatory. Like when you look at the table, you should be able to understand with minimal text below it. There will be only about 2 to 3 figures and tables that are allowed. So You may have to supplement additional supplementary materials if you have more tables and more figures. Use very simple layouts. Don't make the tables very complicated, and use like software to create like tables and figures. Also, when you actually insert a table, it should be referenced in the main text. So in the result section, you would say table 1 shows, and then kind of reference the table 1. And always insert tables and pictures into a new page. Don't make it flooded into a previous page. And again, follow journal's instructions. Every journal has like a different type of the format. And the title of the figure is usually at the bottom and the table is usually at the top. But again, it's not a must. You could pretty much put it anywhere. And if you're doing like RCTs, like randomized control trials, you have to kind of do the figure that represents the research methods. For example, you identify these many charts and then what was the inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, how many charts were excluded or how many patients were excluded based on the exclusion criteria. And then how many totally did you study? And then what happened? So identification, screening, eligibility, and what was included should be placed in the RCT pictures. So checklist for tables and figures. Again, make a deliberate choice early in the writing process. What's going to be a table? What's going to be a figure? The title of the table should reflect what is shown, same for the figures. And ensure that they're self-explanatory. If you were to look at them, you should be able to say, okay, this is what we were looking into. But don't repeat the information in the text. Like just say, see table 1 for this. And if need be, you can put that in the conclusion section. And then design tables to make them clear and easily understood. And then start them on a new page so that you can actually see it better. All right, moving straight along, our next thing to know when you're doing a good study writing or the scientific writing is actually about the references. So reference management software is like the boon. You also have word processor plugin available for these software. So the one that I'm showing you in this picture is actually EndNote. That's the most popular reference management software that we have. There is a limited, I think there is a free version. You can try it for some time and then you have to pay, at least in the United States. I'm not too sure what are the good reference softwares that are available in Indonesia, but I'm sure you can kind of find it. The beauty of the EndNote reference managing system is that you can actually save all the abstracts and then you can also group them into different studies, especially in EndNote. So that's really important. If you're kind of using the reference from another author, let's say another author cited this research for like a particular statement that you're making, make sure you go to the article, you read the article, and then double check, make sure you're not blindly taking references from the other authors. There are different journals. They put different styles for scientific reference placement. So make sure you kind of follow the reference pattern that the journal is asking you to do. And use your words to write the facts from your references. Like don't copy paste things from a particular article and then put it in there. And then if you have 10 references for a particular thing and you need to choose, oh, which one of these am I going to cite? Try to cite the one that has the better level of evidence. For example, RCTs are grade 1. So if you actually have a good RCT, you're going to report that. Open access articles are better because the authors can actually go back and look at the full article. The most fresh research it is, the year published makes sense. Although I would say there is a possibility that you could do most sentinel studies rather than the year published. And then also look at the impact factor of the journal. Because if the journal has good impact factor, you may want to take that over another journal, even though it might be recent. And if the journal doesn't have good impact factor, you have to like consider, should I do this or should I kind of go by the more reputed journal? In the next section that we have, we're going to talk about some of the miscellaneous things, like, for example, authorship. every time you do scientific writing, you have to line the authors one after another, right? So sometimes there's always a confusion of like who is who. So you can see my name here. I'm like number 3 or number 4 on this one. What does the author mean to you? So when I'm author number 4, can someone tell me what do they think is happening? What's my role here? Anyone?
Can you please share your PPT, Doctor?
Oh, wait, you can't see my PPT? Oh, sorry about that. I thought I was sharing the PPT. Can you see it?
Okay, Doctor. Can-
Oh, I apologize. I thought I was sharing my PowerPoint. So
in
here,
Zoom.
look at my number is like Martha Bornstein is first author. Number 2 is Dr. Jessica Gibson. Roselle Beck is number 3. I am number 4. Okay, so I'll go next one. Here, I'm the first author. This is my order of the author, right? And then I'll show you one more. Here I am the last author. So again, the order of the author does make a difference. So here you see in this paper and the other paper. So, okay, so it's a highly debated issue. But before I proceed, Dr. Adi, you can see my screen now?
Yes, Doctor. We can
Okay,
see it.
okay, perfect. Okay. So authorship is a very highly debated issue. There are like, group authorship is chosen when you do like large multi-center, like, big studies. But I think when you have a smaller group of authors who are trying to write a paper together, it's good to talk about what is going to be the order. Usually the lead author, if I'm the person doing everything, they are usually either the first or the last. And the other authors are actually placed in the order of the work that they have done to the paper. And sometimes there is this International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. They actually give you guidelines of how to choose authorship. But then most of the co-author can give feedback or edit the manuscript and proposal. So for example, in this study, which was the traditional or technological, Dr. Nguyen was actually one of my trainees, and she's the first author because she did most of the work. But I was responsible for the idea of it. I kind of trained her. So I became the last and corresponding author. So that's why I'm here in the last. In this paper, this was my study. I got a grant and I wrote this original research article. So that's why I am the first author. And then here, this was actually, I was just a part of a bigger project and I just gave them feedback. I edited some portions of the survey. So I'm kind of like placed in the third or fourth author. So that's the difference in the authorship. I hope that was clear to you. So that's how you change the authorship. Again, as we kind of wind up this lecture, I want to bring up some of the other important aspects of like scientific writing. So journal choice, like again, what is the journal that you're gonna choose? Like you have journal characteristics. Some journals only publish basic science, some publish more clinical research, or some publish a combination of both. Some are focused for general OBGYN doctors. For example, the Journal of Fertility and Sterility, it focuses mostly for the reproductive endocrinologist. Contraception journal focuses mostly on contraception articles. So do you want to put your research into a journal that is, if you're writing about contraception, you may want to go to that specialist journal because that's what produces all the research in the contraception. Subscription versus open access. Open access is very expensive. Subscription only is usually, not that expensive depending on the journal. And sometimes if you want to publish in the top quality journal, you may get rejected. So, you may have to balance between going for the top quality journal and being rejected versus, if you want to publish, you could think about something that's not like in New England Journal of Medicine or JAMA or things like that. But don't be fooled by impact factors. Like even some the journals, even though they don't have that good of an impact factor, they can be great access to the local audience or like your trainees and stuff. So make sure that you don't follow strict impact factor as your to-go list for the publication, but drop like prioritized list of 3 to 5 journals. Let's say who is publishing in this topic, which are the main journals, and you can kind of have a list of that. Before you submit, like read your writing completely, make sure you have adhered to the journal specific author requirements. Follow the steps of the journal online submitting system. So there is a specific system in each of the journal that you have to follow. And archive all the relevant data. Like don't do without saving it on your desktop. Like don't upload anything without having like a backup. And then monitoring the processing of your paper on the journal from time to time. If you submitted it, keep a reminder for yourself to double check what is happening to it. Is this being looked into, where it is in the process of like review of. And then there needs to be a cover letter for every scientific writing that you do. And the cover letter should have the paper's title, what are the significant main findings for the research, and how is it significant to the field? What is it relevant to the journal's audience, information required by the journal, and any additional issues related to the paper. Usually you'll get a review between 2 to 4 weeks. Usually they provide like point by point responses to your journal. Your paper, and then the journal reviewer will have comments for everything. So make sure you review each of them, give a response to the reviewer. If they recommend a change and you think the change is appropriate, make the change to the paper and tell them where you changed it, and then provide like the revised paper and make sure all the authors approve all the changes that you made before submitting it. And it's heartbreaking when you get a rejection on a scientific paper, but don't get frustrated. Just improve your paper, submit it back if possible based on the reviewer comments. But if they think that they're not gonna publish your research, you can think of, that's why I said make a list of 3 to 5 journals so that you can actually have the ability to submit a new version to a different journal once you get all the information in. If we were to think about our own specialty, right? Like, I think there are lots of good ones. In the US, we have Green Journal, which is the Obstetrics and Gynecology, the Gray Journal, which is the American Journal of OBGYN. There's Contraception for contraception research. There is, if you are looking into global thing, you have International Journal of Gynecology and Obstetrics. That's the FIGO's official journal. And then every site will have the author's guidelines. And during the discussion, if someone wants to know how to find the author's guidelines, I'm happy to show that to you. If you want to insert an image, don't just Google and insert an image. Sometimes I think AI can help you to generate some images. And also, I think with the newer AI models, if language is a problem for you, AI can help you to kind of like make the language a little bit better, but make sure you're not copy pasting anything that you take from AI. Because again, nowadays, there is problem with that, and then plagiarism and other things are taken into consideration. There is a great set of articles on the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology, which is called Writing Tip Series. There's about 10 articles that talks about all these different things. So I've kind of referenced most of my articles through that one. So I think I'm going to kind of pass it on to Dr. Adi for information and discussion. And this is my contact information in case you have questions that you don't want to ask now, but have other questions or something. And I also put my social media handles in there in case someone is interested to kind of look into it. I don't post a lot in social media, but it's that's the one. So
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Aparna, for your presentation. Please give applause for Dr. Aparna.
I hope this was useful.
Yes. Let me summarize of your talk, Dr. Aparma. Maybe the main one that we should write when we want to write a scientific writing is maybe the IMRAT, yeah, introduction and then method and then result and discussion. For the introduction, we should clear and state the background of the manuscript from the common knowledge to the specific knowledge. And then after that, we should state the gap of them. And then after that, we should clearly write our purpose, the importance and the novelty of our research. And then for the method, we should use method correctly, and we should state the population, inclusion and exclusion criteria, and also the place of the study. For the result, we just write exactly as the method we described before. And then we should write it in the past tense. And then for the discussion, we should write the strength of our study and then the weakness of our study and discuss the similarities and differences from our study from the other previous research. Okay, now the time is for the discussion. Anyone want to ask any question for Dr. Aparna? Please raise your hand in the Zoom or in this room. Dr. Aparna will answer it.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Aparna, for the nice and comprehensive explanation. My name is Lucy. I would like to ask about actually what are the main characteristics from the scientific writing that distinguish from other type of writing? I mean, like in the basic, general, and especially how we write the paper. Thank you.
When you say other type of writing, I think there is, I mean, the biggest difference between a general writing versus scientific writing is one, the structure of it. As I said, like, to include all the different aspects of the scientific information that you're actually trying to convey to the reader and the reviewer, and putting it in like in a structured format. In a general writing, for example, if you're writing an essay, you would probably just write about a particular thing and then you'll put everything together. But if you're actually publishing a paper or writing a protocol, there is actually a set information that you need to put that in, and you have to you have to follow the guidelines, right? That's one of the big differences. And what makes a good paper and what makes an okay paper depends on how concisely you can put all the information together, how good were the methodology adhered to, and how important are the results that you published, and what are the implications of that to your clinical practice. I hope that
Okay.
answers your question.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Aparma, for the answer. Anyone want to ask any question? Dr. Reska? Okay. Dr. Reska want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Hello, good morning, doctor. My name is Aska. I'm currently as one of the resident in this OBGYN department. First of all, thank you for the nice presentation and opening our mind about on how to write a good scientific paper. I might have a few questions if I
Sure.
may ask more than one question.
Of
It's
course.
four actually.
Go
So
for
sorry
it.
because it's so interesting, and I cannot hold myself to ask this question. First of all, about making a title for a scientific paper, is it okay to make it with how do we say it, with a language that is not 100% scientific, like we add idioms or like state of the art, that kind of stuff? And then second question about a research question. I might have watched or read that a research question should be as specifically as possible before we make the question itself. Are you agree with that statement or not, and why? And then the third one, what bothers me whenever I want to write some things is about the novelty of my research. Because I want to know whether that my research has been done before or not. Do you have any tips on overcoming that? And how do we implement it? And then the last one is that you stated before that we can use AI whenever we want to write in the scientific paper. Could you please elaborate more on how to input the AI into our writing? Because you said we cannot copy paste it directly. So how do we implement it in our research? Thank you. I apologize if I asked so many
No,
questions, but
no, this is great.
it's so
I might
interesting. Yeah,
need
thank you.
you to tell me one more time the second question that you had, regarding the research question. Can you repeat that one
Yeah.
more time?
Yeah, the research question should be specific or not before we making the research question, or like any open question can be a research question.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Let me go one by one. So title. You can make the title more attractive by putting idioms or like using some of the local phrases or like other things, but you have to remember the titles are usually very short in terms of the number of word count that the journal gives is not long. So sometimes if your idioms or other things are going to take away from the main scientific information that's could be provided, then maybe not. But if you don't have the ability to, I mean, if you don't have the, obligations of controlling it with the number of words and stuff, then maybe you can go more creative and you can put it in. But don't compromise the title by putting unnecessary information where, as I said, if you were to if I were to look up your paper, then I need to know the basics of that keywords in your title because that's what is going to that's what's going to come out of PubMed. So you have to keep that in the when you write the title. The second question you had is the research question. It should not be specific. I mean, the more specific you get with the research question, the better outcomes you have. You have to think about what's your primary outcome, what are your secondary outcomes, and then develop your research question based on that. So because depending on what you define as your primary outcome or the secondary outcome, you can actually define the research question. And the more specific the research question is, the better it is, because then you can actually you can write your methods and then the results section in a more comprehensive manner rather than confusing the audience with like a more broader one. Because the broader the research question, the result can be very confounding and it can be confusing, but more specific research questions always yield you better papers. Um, the novelty of the research, it's a very interesting question. So when my students come to me or my residents come to me and say, I'm thinking of doing this research in this topic, the first thing I tell them is to go to PubMed or Google Scholar or the Web of Science. There's like 3 or 4 main databases where you put in your research keywords, and then get all the articles that have been done in that particular topic. Just look at it. And then let's say there are certain things that are already done, then maybe write it down and see what did they do, what were their primary outcomes, what did they hypothesize. And I tell my students to make an Excel document and then start putting all the research that are there in that field. And at the end of that exercise, you'll either be able to say, yes, my idea is like very novel. Nobody has done anything because I didn't find anything. Or, yeah, my art idea is good because people haven't done much about it. Or my idea is like, oh, someone exactly did this paper, but then there is a different audience that I can do this paper with, or, there's something else. In places like in my university, we actually have librarians. They can help us with this process. Like if I tell them, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, can you look into the literature? They can do it. But it's not a rocket science. You can actually do it by, searching keywords on the PubMed. The AI usage is going to be interesting. Like, I think the biggest thing that you can do with the AI is probably generate like some of the images if you want, or like maybe kind of check the grammar. So, for example, there is a thing called Grammarly. I don't know if you guys have heard. So, it is actually a plugin to your Word document, and it actually checks your topic for the grammar mistakes that you do. I studied in India. English is not my first language. I studied in my mother tongue. So whenever I write, I always worry, am I following the grammatical, all the perfectness? Because I always worry that sometimes my sentence is not grammatically correct. So I use this Grammarly, which is like an AI based thing. It actually checks the grammar for me and it kind of highlights where there is an error. So those are some of the things that you can use. I wouldn't just like use like a GPT or something and copy paste from there. That's what I was telling you not to do. But there are lots of AI based platforms which can actually help you to make your article better. I hope I answered all four of them.
Yeah. Thank you. Just to quick comment about that. For the third question, I think here in Indonesia, we tend to like make the research question and do the research first, and then we end up getting an obstacle because of the novelty. And what you just said about making I capture it as a mini scoping review before we make our research is a nice technique to implement before we're making our research, and I thank you for that.
But also remember, don't think of it as a hurdle. Let's say you found something that is very similar to what you have done. Remember, there can be more than one article in any field, and it only makes that particular research area more strong by publishing more papers into it. So that's not always a hurdle. And also maybe let's say some article was published in United States and you're looking at it in Indonesia, maybe the Indonesian audience with
Population,
the same
yeah.
question will still be very beneficial. So don't think that as a hurdle. Not always.
Okay. And one quick response again about the AI one. So if we make a generated AI picture, could we add that picture with the reference of the AI created image to our scientific paper?
I think you should, because nowadays I think transparency is key. If you did say, I think it was generated by AI or something, then maybe you should kind of let the journal know, just so that if they don't want it, they can at least tell you, no, we don't want an AI generated image. Just do a standard one, then you can probably do it. It's always good to be transparent. It's always good to say the truth.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for the answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aparna and Dr. Reska. Maybe because of the limited time of Dr. Aparna, maybe one question. Yeah, Dr. Amel? Yeah, Dr. Melati.
Hello, good evening, doctor. Thank you so much for the brilliant presentations. Let me introduce. My name is Melati. I want to ask one question, doctor. That you explained before that there is important to find a good reference for our scientific writing. So can you explain more about how important to find the good references, and can you give us a tips with how to find or a shortcut to find a relevant references for our scientific writing? Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, I don't know if there is a shortcut to it, because if you were to, let's say you're writing about a particular topic, whenever you write a sentence that actually states a fact, that needs to be backed up by a reference. One of the things you can do is either go for like a textbook that actually has that article and then kind of see, that has the topic, and then like look at the topic and then kind of go back to the references that are there and then start searching that on PubMed. And then the PubMed can actually usually tell you what are some of the newer things in the same topic. So you can actually look it up that way. Or you can choose sentinel articles. Like, for example, in US, we have the American College of OBGYN has these things called practice bulletins or committee opinions and things like that. So I usually try to reference something very standard. For global audience, I do think WHO, FIGO, they all have standard documents. So trying to kind of reference the more standard documents is usually helpful. If you haven't seen a reference management software, have you guys heard of EndNote? That's one of the most popular one. So you actually can download like one of that on your computer, and then you can actually, that will help you to download all the citations directly from the PubMed or like Web of Science and then into it, and then you can keep grouping them into different different groups, and then you can kind of make them be inserted into the Word document very easily. So reference management software such as EndNote are like very helpful. That might be a good shortcut that you're thinking about. But when you're actually trying to reference, most of the references actually come from either the introduction or the discussion, and the methods section. You can always reference the website that I showed you, which is the consort and other kind of types of the guidelines. So it makes it easier. So that's what I would say are the most common ones. And I do have some more time. I'm happy to stay here till another 15-20 minutes if anybody has any other questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aparna. Maybe Dr. Aparna, one more question from the Zoom. If anyone in the Zoom want to ask directly to Dr. Aparna, or maybe you can type it on the chat room. From the Zoom participant, does anyone want to ask a question directly to Dr. Aparna? No? Still no? Okay. Dr. Aparna, do you still have time for discussion?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Another 10-15 minutes if anybody has any questions.
Okay, because the limited time of yours. Maybe one more time in here, in the room. Or maybe from me, Dr. Aparna.
Sure.
Dr. Aparna, thank you very much for your lecture. I'm just curious, maybe you are experienced as editor and reviewers. So what is your experience become the editors of the reviewers of the journal when you accept the manuscript from the scientists? What is the consideration for you to accept it, or oh, it's not good, just decline it?
Well, I am currently an associate editor for one of the maternal health, perinatology, and neonatology, one of the journals, and I serve myself as the ad hoc reviewer for many of the journals. I think when you are in the field of publishing, it's important to return the favor by reviewing reviewing like the some of the literature that comes your way, and it also keeps you up to date on what's being published and what is happening in the world of like the specialty that you actually are pursuing. So I get most of the invitation to review, and depending on the time that I have, I select about one or two articles every 2 to 3 months to review. When I wear the hat of the editor, and again, I think I look at the title and see, is this like even worth publishing based on what they're suggesting? Then I actually read the abstract, and if the abstract gives me very kind of no good feeling about either the method or like the implications of the research, I actually kind of then have a lesser threshold to think about, do I want to publish this or not? And then as an editor, I have to review the entire paper. I think I'll base mostly my kind of like judgment based on the methods and the results. And also how honest the authors are in discussing the limitations and strengths and the implications of the study. Obviously, if the implications of clinical practice is huge and the data in that particular subject is sparse, then we do kind of publish that without thinking twice. But if there's already enough data on it and it's like a same one more article and low response rate or not having any other information, then I have a lower threshold to reject those articles. So I've it's a lot of time to be a reviewer. I'm actually really thinking of like just doing a couple of reviews per year and making sure that we follow some of the but it is important to be reviewing on the reviewing end when you're publishing, just so that you can see what type of articles are being published.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aparna. Because sometimes we already write our manuscript, but sometimes we are very very afraid that the editor or reviewer will decline our manuscript. And then, Dr. Aparna, as you mentioned that when we write the scientific writing, you should write on the introduction and then method, result, and then discussion. Should we write it one by one, or we can write the result first, and then after that, we just think about the introduction part or method part, because it's sometimes difficult for us to write in the range. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the intro probably you would have written first before, because when you're thinking about a research question and when you're thinking about what you need to do, you would have started your your search to see, is it there, what has been done. So most of the questions that I posed on the introduction is already happening when you're actually looking into the research question, right? So I feel like the introduction might have already happened when you're actually doing your basic research. The methods and the results can actually be written in any order. You can actually, I think what happens is the methods is already done before you actually put your research in. So the writing part you can write in any way, but I think the ingredients are already with you because you would have done it in the order of introduction, and then you would have decided what methods am I going to use, and then you'll do the study, and then you'll get your results. So in the real life, I think it comes in that order organically, but then when you're writing it, you can actually do a little bit of like here and there, and then you can write it like, I write different chunks different times depending on how my mood is, what I feel like writing that day, I'll write it. But preparation wise, I think introduction and then methods and then results, they go in that order.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Zoom? Okay. We have one question from the Zoom.
Uh-huh.
Ada. Sorry, Doctor. I will read it for you. Thank you for your great presentation, Doctor. I would like to ask when to use active sentence and passive sentence when writing scientific articles. Thank you. From the Hanif Muflihatun.
Of course, I think the choice is really depending on the context and the message you want to convey, right? Because most of the times, like passive voice is useful when, like, the focus is on the result. For example, you're describing something that's already happened, whereas the active voice is like kind of used more like when you're describing more direct like information and things, like the introduction and things like that. So I think it really depends on the context of whether, the what you're kind of putting, and sometimes the journal guidelines too. Sometimes the journals will say you have to present it in this kind of type, then you have to go based on that one.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Aparna, for the answer. Okay, thank you very much, professors, doctors, because the time is limited. Dr. Aparna, before we end this lecture, could we take a picture together, Doctor?
Of course.
Okay.
And please send
Please,
it to
Doctor,
me.
Professor. Yes, please, Doctor, Professor, and the college, we can move here and we can take a picture together with Dr. Aparna.
Tell me when I have to
Yeah,
keep
please,
my.
please wait, Doctor. Adanya Dr. Anis saja, sama Dr. Ega. Dr. Agung. Dr. Ega. Duduk sini, Dr. Ega. Dok, depan aja, Dok. Saya sini aja, Dok. Yaudah. Satu lagi, Dok. Siapa? Dr. Ciud. Okay. Are you ready, Dr. Aparna? We will
Yeah.
take a picture together. Okay. Please give a big smile. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Okay. One more. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Okay. Thank you very much,
Thank
Dr.
you so
Aparna, and
much.
thank you very much for the participant.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I want to thank all of you for having me over there.
We also really appreciate that you can give us the lecture today, Dr. Aparna. Beside your business schedule,
No problem.
you can talk in here. Looking forward for any collaboration in the
Yeah,
future, Dr. Aparna. Please keep in touch with us. So now
definitely.
the times I give it back to the Master of Ceremony, Dr. Hindun.
Okay, thank you so much, thank you so much, Dr. Aparna, for increasing our knowledge in good scientific writing. Hopefully, this will motivate us more to increase our writing and increase our publication from Obstetrics and Gynecology, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada. And I would like to thank everyone who came here, every participant, and everyone who contributed to this event. And I would like to wish you all a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.